You're watching TeleSur English. This is from the South. I'm Katrina Goss, and we are now going live to a press conference from the Guyana Elections Commission.
Came forward and assisted, and quickly the lines disappeared. So until now, we have not heard about anything untoward. Of course, there were minor incidents, but nothing incidental. However, we are about to later to have our tabulation. At this time, I would urge members of the media not to sensationalize any of their stories, because at this time we're in a charged atmosphere, and so we have to be careful how we go about spreading stories. We must always verify our stories before we publish them. This afternoon, I heard someone saying someone set the fire in a location. One has to be very careful. We don't know whether someone did set the fire, whether it was grass burning, we do not know. But one has to be careful, because these things can escalate into mistrust and even violence. So let us avoid those things. But again, ladies and gentlemen, I am very happy you're here, and I'm very happy that you're walking the journey with GCOM. So I thank you very much, and I will hand you over back to our PRO.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. For those of you who, just to remind the viewing audience that our polls today were conducted at 2,339 polling stations across the country, and of course with the official list of electors being 660,998. Colleagues, as we move forward, this morning I provided the breakdown of the total number of electors by region, as well as the number of polling stations by region. I would just like to recap so that as we get into our process later this evening, that you will understand how those results are going to be flowing. So in Region 1, with 99 polling stations, 18,952 electors. In Region 2, 135 polling stations with 37,979 electors. Region 3, 355 polling stations, catering for 100,758 electors. In Region 4, 879 polling stations with 285,618 electors. In Region 5, 158 polling stations, catering for 44,663 electors. In Region 6, 378 polling stations, catering for 99,131 electors. In Region 7, 82 polling stations, 14,887 electors. In Region 8, 55 polling stations, 7,431 electors. And Region 9, 73 polling stations with 17,771 electors, and in Region 10, 125 polling stations with 33,000 808 electors. At this time, I will now invite the CEO to provide us with an update as to the day's proceedings, and then he will also inform us as to the process going forward this evening. CEO, Mr. Keith Lowenfield.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Piero. It has been a long day. And as Madam Chair has indicated, thankfully it has come to an end. Polling has concluded. The next subset, or the current subset being done, is that counting is taking place at all polling stations across the spectrum, across the country. It is our hope that that count will conclude in a good time to allow for the statements of poll to be placed, first of all, at a conspicuous location outside of the polling station. And secondly, for the statements intended for the returning officer or returning officers and the CEO. It's uplifted by the deputy returning officers and it's transmitted to the offices of the RO and the CEO. Our own plan is to ensure that that process commences and concludes as far as practicable this evening. Whether it's concluded or not this evening, statements would be received by returning officers who will all commence a public verification process, which includes the public display of each statement in every district, and that process will continue until all the statements for those particular districts are concluded. Once that is completed, the returning officers will declare the results in the respective districts. While that is happening, no doubt the ROs would have ensured that the statements for the CEO is forwarded on the escort to his office. So that is a process that continues throughout this evening. I'm advised by the returning officers that in most instances that process is likely to commence at about 22 hours this evening in some instances, and in other instances the agents would have been informed that between the hours of 21 hours and 22 hours. Commencement, as I indicated this morning, is dependent on the receipts of statements from the DROs coming into those offices. That is what the next 9 hours entails. And all things being equal, if tomorrow, as I did indicate earlier today, the statements for some districts will be with the returning officers, that allows for a declaration in each of the 10 districts where voting took place. that is all I have for you for now, as we await the process that is ongoing at this point in time, that it goes smoothly, and that the statements derived are transported, and that the boxes in which those votes are, they're taken to the safe location for safety. So that is all I have for you for now, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, CEO. At this time, I will now invite questions from floor. Please ensure that you indicate by raising your hand so that the microphone gets to you, and you indicate the name and the media house you're from.
Good night. Mr. Lowenfield, Ragabir Prime News. Could you say what would be the realistic time frame in keeping with your regulations, your internal communications, your tabulation for the final results to be released? And even as your tabulation is ongoing, will we have some real-time updates as the districts release their numbers? And my final question, sir, is GCOM investigating what happened or what led to some amount of disturbance at Monrepo this afternoon? And did you detect any irregularities in the voting process in that particular area?
Thank you very much. As far as, I'll start with the Monrepo issue. I think GCOM will have to await the investigations that are currently being undergone. My latest information is that there is, well, the count is going on and there's a standoff, my word, a standoff among party constituents. The police is present, and I'm sure reports will emanate from that location, from the police, and from our own presiding officers who are currently still at the Monrepo Primary School compound conducting the count.
Just for clarity, you are doing an investigation, as in GCOM is doing an investigation?
As soon as the process there concludes, I mean, before us at the moment is the fact that we need to bring closure to the day's proceedings. Those POs, those DROs who are engaged, no doubt our investigation will continue as soon as they are free from the completion of the task that is before them at the moment. As it relates to a time for final declaration, as you put it, you will recall that I said it is the Commission's desire to have the final declaration of results in the earliest possible time. I will not commit to a date and time, except to say that as the process moves, I'm strongly assuming that by tomorrow midday, all the ROs would have had their declarations in the respective districts. That is as far as I'll go at this point in time relative to timelines for the final declaration. I'm going one day at a time, as it were. And your third question?
I was asking about real-time release from the ROs. Anything like that would be done?
All right, let me respond to that question. I wish to provide you with a URL now which is a secure platform that will go live immediately after we start processing that information. And so you can go to www.guyanaelections.com. So that's a secure platform. The updates will also be sent to you, as I indicated earlier, in JPEG and PDF formats via email, as well as via our Facebook page. So you will have those periodic updates. I can't say definitively if it's going to be every hour, 2 hours, but as the information comes into us and it's processed, and we have a sizable portion that we can release, we will proceed in that regard. So the URL again, it's www.guyanaelections.com. You can also check our Facebook page as well as the emails that you will receive in JPEG and PDF format. Do we have another question at the back? Just now, Mr. Chabral at the back.
Jules Brown from TV6 News in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm just wondering, in terms of the Commission's resources and so on, what would have been the biggest challenge in having this election take place, both in terms of not just the resources, but also the time in which GCOM would have had to get everything ready for this election?
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Brown, for that question. I'm sure that you would have been following as it relates to our journey to this end. It took a lot in terms of, one, our operational activities, the planning in that regard. We started training, which is one of the longest subset in terms of our timeline for that. And of course, legally, a number of the statutory timelines is included in the Representation of the People Act, which guides the conduct of general and regional elections in Guyana. So on that premise, observing all those legal and procedural requirements, those are some of the key factors that we had to consider in our preparation for the conduct of these elections. And no doubt the conduct of the polls today is evident in terms of the amount of work that we would have had to put in on the ground, both logistically and operationally. So that's where we're at on that.
This morning at one polling station, I did observe some long lines. I'm not sure if that was a combination of the people coming out early to vote in large numbers, and also any change in the process. If you could help give me some clarification on that.
The lines at the polling stations, one, what we found on the ground was that some persons initially did not take the proactive step in checking to ensure which polling station they were voting. You would recognize that we have polling place, and in that polling place we have a number of polling stations. And while they were adequately and clearly marked, some persons, without even paying attention to the signs, opted to wait in the line to deal with the information clerks. In some instances, there might have been some challenges on that part in terms of the pace at which information clerks were. But I think that in itself contributed to some of that backlog in terms of the lines. Where possible, where we got that information, we had teams on the ground who provided the necessary support to ensure that we were able to quickly move the process forward. In some cases, operationally, it's not changing the process, as you said, but in some instances where we could have developed 2 voting compartments instead of 1, that kind of shift was done, but not in terms of the process. The process is what is required by law, so that is what we, of course, had to adhere to.
Just one other thing, any reports thus far in terms of any issues concerning ballots that had to be rejected for any reason? Or would you have to wait until later on?
Well, we'll have to wait until the count is over to have that kind of determination. Thank you very much. I think Mr. Cabral.
Yes, Yolanda. Could you say whether there was an incident at St. Ambrose Primary which resulted in the arrest of at least 4 persons? I'm asking this simply for a confirmation from Jacob's perspective. And can you say whether the district declarations will be made available on your platform?
I can ask the CEO. I'm not aware of the issue at St. Ambrose. I'm not sure if the CEO has received that report.
No, I have not received any report about arrests at St. Ambrose. I was advised of an arrest taking place on the East Coast. I was not advised as to any arrests in the city.
And what's that arrest about you're referring to in the East Coast?
I'm advised that it was related to the allegation that an individual was making an effort to vote more than once.
That's a female or a male?
Say again?
A female or a male? Man or woman?
I didn't ask that. I'm not sure. I was merely informed as to what obtained. I did not get into the details of whether it was masculine or feminine.
And this is Moripo you're referring to?
No, I'm not sure if it's Monrepo. The reports I get informs that there's an incident and police were called in and the person would have moved to a location. Those details I do not inquire in at this point in time. That information will be coming to me at a later stage.
Mr. Lowenfield, can you say whether as part of your investigation you are in possession of an ID card of belonging to one of 2 men who bear the same name?
No, I don't. The investigation to determine that is with the police. I or GCOM doesn't have any ID card. The investigations are being conducted by the relevant authority.
Thank you.
Mr. Cabral, just to respond to your other question, I will alert the media as it relates to the time and place of the declarations at the regional levels. I know the radio stations in the respective regions will try to bring that coverage, but from GCOM's end, we have not put any systems in place for a live coverage of those declarations. It is something that we can possibly explore, but at this point, we have not put any systems in place for a live declaration, but the radio stations in the respective regions will be bringing the coverage of those. The results, that's correct. That's correct.
Leroy Smith, Big Smith News Watch. Ms. Watt, could you say if there was a situation in Essequibo where someone voted proxy for someone and the person was represented by a proxy subsequently showed up to vote in Region 2, and could you also say, based on your information from staff and maybe the police, outside of the case that Ms. Lowenfield would have mentioned, if there have been any other arrests for election offenses, and if yes, what are some of those offenses?
I haven't, on the District 2 issue of proxy and who voted for whom, that has not yet, that has not reached us. Right? No one would have reported to us such a situation. As far as police actions today, I'm aware that in District 3, the police were called out. And there again, I'm advised that there was a standoff at the villages. Not good intent. Mr. Eastman, what's the name of the village? Sisters Village in District 3. So I'm aware of that entry, and at another point in time we were told that there is a buildup of individuals at potential. Our investigations revealed that that was not so, and the other being at Monrepo as far as police actions during the course of the day went. So I have not received any other report that would have necessitated police action across the country.
And yes, we've been watching there the live press conference by the Guyana Elections Commission. It was reported by the Commission that there were no major incidents reported and that the vote ran smoothly today. However, in the questions, some of the journalists pointed to certain incidents that had been reported during the day. There was also an extensive report regarding the polling stations, which was a big issue in the vote today. And there were suggestions that some people were confused as to where they should vote. But according to the Commission, there was a report that was given saying that everything ran perfectly smoothly and that voters had turned out at polling stations as scheduled. The CEO of the Commission also reported that the vote counting has begun and they hope that this evening that process will conclude. The results will be announced in each district and will be open to public verification before the official results are finally announced. The CEO did respond to a question saying that he hoped that there would be at least the initial results by tomorrow midday, but he wouldn't give a time frame in terms of the final results and when they might be announced. And with this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.